Hi guys, and welcome to the Bombshell Diaries. Today I have Nayelli from Astronatic, and she is an astrologer who is looking to bring astrology mainstream as an additional tool people can use to live their most authentic lives. And we were introduced when she actually reached out to, I was kind of going through something postpartum where I was like, I'm trying to just figure out my next identity. I felt like I was having a huge identity crisis, and she did an Astro report for me, which I felt was so grounding and just helped me gain a lot of clarity of where I want to go next in life. So I had never met with an astrologer before, and after you and I connected, I was like, oh, we need to get on camera and just have a nice conversation about blending cycle syncing and astrology, which is what we're going to talk about today. But before we get started, can you just give a nice introduction to yourself and your work, and so we can just understand what you do?
Yeah, thanks, Laura, and I'm so excited for this. So hi, everybody. My name is Nayelli, and I have an interesting story. But long story short, I'm originally from New Jersey. I now live in Vancouver, so you may hear like the Vancouver landscapes. I literally have the mountains outside of my window. I love it here, and I started Astronatic, I would say probably a year and a half ago. I first started it as a medium.com series, about celebrity stories based on astrology. And then it just became a bigger thing, a bigger brand. And the main offering is the Astro Report, which is what Laura was given. And that's a report that goes over certain aspects of life, such as relationship tendencies, personality, career destiny, etc., so that you can learn more about yourself. So the approach that I take with astrology is not so much the predicting aspect. That's not really, my forte or what I focus on. I really focus on helping people understand their natal charts and understanding themselves and gaining self-awareness. And I think that comes from my background as a counselor and a career counselor as well. So when I'm not doing Astronatic, I'm working in higher education at a co-op office. So I help people find their path regardless of what I'm doing. And I love Astronatic. And for me, it's a way to make astrology relatable, even to people that aren't really aware of astrology or haven't followed it before. It's a way to make it modern and relatable to the everyday person, just like Laura mentioned.
I think, yeah, and you've done such a beautiful job, because like I would sometimes read my horoscope and, kind of understand certain things based off when I was born. But I think the kicker for me was certainly having the report that I could go through, but then having the conversation with you where you could actually give me a little bit more guidance of what was in the report. So like we had a great conversation just of even like my career and where I wanted to take Balanced Bombshells. And it's just like, it's almost like you were saying what was on my heart anyway, but I needed that extra outsider to like bring it to my attention. And then for you to be like, well, it's written in your chart. So it's like, it's your destiny. So I believe in all of that stuff. So, but something you and I bonded over was how we could blend cycle syncing and astrology of what's in the stars for us with what's practical with our cycle, because everything's just so interconnected with our spiritual, mental, and emotional health. So I'd love to know from an astrology standpoint, and you and I had talked about this a little bit of like, I think when we talked, we were going through retrograde. So you're like, oh, I'm not dating right now. And I was like, well, that's interesting. Let's talk about that. So you're single. I'm now married. I was single for many years, ladies. So whether you're single, coupled up, this is going to be a great conversation for us to dive into. So I'd love to know your astrology take on like the best times to date versus not the best times to date.
Yeah, for sure. I guess I'll start with the half glass empty information, which is, ideally when you really shouldn't be dating, or at least if you are dating, not expecting as many results. And for me, that's during certain retrogrades. The first is definitely Mercury Retrograde. So we are just coming out of a Mercury Retrograde right now. If you follow astrology, you've probably heard of Mercury Retrograde ending June 22nd. However, once retrograde ends, there's a retro shadow. So, and that lasts about a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks. So this Mercury retrograde, which actually was a really impactful one because it was in Gemini, which is the sign that's related to Mercury. The retro shadow ends around July 8th, July 9th. So when I decide to take breaks from dating, I keep the pre-shadow and the retro shadow of a retrograde in mind. So I probably won't even start thinking about being on the dating scene again until July 8th or July 9th. So the reason why, yeah, exactly.
I was like, I don't know. And I'm not like super into the retrograde. I can sometimes understand when it's happening, but I definitely do not know this the way that you do. So I'm so fascinated to like learn as you're speaking. So during that time, do you do any like prep work for like for yourself? Is that a time to like kind of just focus on you, your career, self-care? Like, what do you do during that time when you're then not dating?
Yeah, exactly. You know, the reason why Mercury retrograde isn't the best time to meet somebody new is because it's a time of reflection. So sometimes during Mercury retrograde, exes will come back, or you might, you know, end up processing emotions that you might have not realized about maybe somebody you dated in the past, or even your current partner. So Mercury retrograde is really a time to reflect and to take more time out for yourself. So that's how I approach it as somebody single. When it's Mercury retrograde, I just, you know, I reflect. I might read some self-help books. I, you know, have that extra time for myself. You know, dating takes up quite a bit of time, and you don't realize not doing it, like being on dating apps, going out there, making time for dates. So, and I think for people that are in relationships, Mercury retrograde is the time to reflect on the relationship and perhaps see how things are going. Mercury retrograde is known to bring miscommunication. So it could be a time where couples may miscommunicate and might get into conflict due to that. And if you're meeting somebody new and you're single, it's hard to get things off the ground because things aren't really clear, and they may not become clear until after Mercury retrograde. So even if you do meet somebody new during that time, you probably want to wait after Mercury retrograde is over to see if the situation will still be the same, if the connection will still be there. So Mercury retrograde actually happens quite often during the year. So it happens 3 to 4 times a year. And each time Mercury retrograde happens, it lasts 3 weeks. But if you count the pre and the retro shadow, it could really be 6 weeks. So that could easily add up to almost half of the year of us and some influence of Mercury retrograde. So that means, you know, if you do follow or decide to take dating breaks, if you're single during Mercury retrograde, that means half of the year you're kind of putting down the brakes, you know, pumping the brakes when it comes to your dating.
Which I think is actually really helpful, because when you're dating, like, you need that balance of taking time off. Like before I met Tyler, I met him online on a dating app. So I feel like this is like key. And it was like 2.5 years that I was then dating on those apps to try and like find my person. And I 100% had to take breaks. Like, and all of my friends who have done the same thing, it's the same thing. Like you just get to a point where you have to take a break. So I love that you can then be a bit more strategic on your efforts, especially knowing like the energies around us, because as women, like we're so in tune with our external and spiritual energies, whether we're aware of it or not. So I love that you can even just look at the calendar and understand like, okay, here's a specific time period that I can just do me and do whatever I want, and then have the energy and the mental stamina to be out dating. So then when it comes to couples, because like, you know, if we're in retrograde right now, I can definitely tell that my husband and I have been having like conflicting conversations where like, I feel like I can't like communicate as well, or like he's not like hearing it as effectively. So you can kind of tell that, you know, there's just a little bit of tension sometimes. So like with communication in couples, what then happens during retrograde?
Yeah, so it definitely mixes up communication. You know, your partner may say something and you may take a different meaning of it than what your partner is actually trying to convey. So, or maybe you have these thoughts that are, or any emotions that are bubbling up inside of you, and you just don't know how to express them. And I think that's especially true with this latest retrograde, that it was in Gemini, which the core of it was May 29th to June 22nd. And we're still in retro shadow of it for the next few days or week or so. So that one probably hit heavy for a lot of people, just because Gemini, just like the planet Mercury, is very much about communication. So the theme of this Mercury retrograde that just happened was almost like double the mishaps when it comes to communication or even technology. So I think for couples, a way to, you know, make it through that time is to recognize that this might be a funk that might just last a few weeks, and kind of working through it, or, you know, finding different ways to communicate. So if normally as a couple, you kind of communicate on the spur of the moment, and that's not working during this time. Maybe decide to communicate on a scheduled time, or maybe this may seem out of the box, but maybe express what you're feeling or thinking in ways that don't necessarily have to involve words, whether it's, you know, maybe doing something artistic together, or doing a physical activity like hiking, and seeing if that brings whatever is inside of you out. So I think that could be a way to combat it, just finding different ways to communicate, because that's really, that's one of the characteristics of the sign of Gemini. And whenever, you know, just finding different ways to communicate and not relying on what's always been, you know, the method of communication. But there's two other retrogrades that are also important to keep in mind when it comes to relationships. And they don't happen as often as Mercury retrograde, but they're also important to keep in mind. And the first out of those two is Venus retrograde. So Venus is the planet of love, you know, the goddess of love. So when that's retrograde, then that's definitely going to put things that have to do with love, romance, and relationships. It's definitely going to make it shaky. And Venus retrograde will happen probably once every 18 months. Okay. Luckily, we don't have that happening this year. Well, actually, not until the end of the year. So December 19th, Venus retrograde starts again. So if you're on the dating scene, you probably want to make the most out of the time between, you know, mid-July until December to be out there and dating. Because once December 19th arrives, it's going to provide challenges with anybody that meets somebody new. And it'll definitely be an opportunity for couples to address things in their relationship that they didn't get the chance to address. And then the second retrograde, or really third out of this trio to watch out for, is Mars retrograde. So that Mars is the planet of action. It's the planet of impulse and desire. So when it comes to Mars retrograde, it's going to affect, I guess, your desire for somebody. It's going to affect sexual compatibility. Things have to do with action and impulse. So if you meet somebody during Mars retrograde, you might be really into them, or you might not be. And then that could all change after that Mars retrograde is done. And I know from personal experience, the past two Mars retrogrades, I've met somebody new, and it's always ended up being kind of off when it came to the sexual compatibility or how I perceived the person. It was almost like being under a spell for that time. And then once the Mars retrograde is over, it's like the person you knew turned into a pumpkin, so to speak. And you're kind of like, what happened? Yeah. And then when it comes to couples during Mars retrograde, sexual compatibility might be off. Couples may realize they might need to address that aspect of their relationship. They might need to change things up. So luckily, Mars retrograde won't be happening until next year, so fall of year. So we have some time before. But Mars retrograde, I find, is a difficult one to deal with personally.
And I find it fascinating too of how you're able to take the astrology and blend it into like our relationships and the challenges we might face, because it's the same thing with our cycle where women, you know, our emotions will change throughout the month, and how we feel either towards our person or our life can change. And we kind of get stuck in our heads where we think that like the person is the problem, or we are the problem, or our life is the problem. And it's really meant to just like guide and direct your efforts so that you can feel more free flowing within yourself, feel more free flowing within your life. And when there's tension and resistance, it's either like, okay, it might be a time that you're supposed to reflect, or, you know, take a step back, or you can kind of just tell things aren't coming together as effectively. But I love that we can now add this additional layer of astrology. And we might have listeners who are way more into this than I have been, and probably know this more than me, because sometimes I talk to women in our community and they're all about this, where I just feel like I'm such a beginner. But in terms of like, while you were speaking, when you were saying that like the retrograde can be a time of reflection, it's the same with our cycle every single month, where like when we have our period, we're meant to reflect. Like we're not actually supposed to be out there doing life at the same capacity we have been all month long. Like it's really a wonderful time for a woman to turn inward and really take time and space for herself. So like for most women, you know, our periods last anywhere between like 3 to 7 days. And so like it's such a great like reflection period every single month that I think is built into our lives. We just don't ever either acknowledge that or give ourselves permission to do that, because, you know, life happens. It's like in our face all the time. But I love that we can now look at the calendar of like, okay, I'm having my period, you know, like I would actually try not to date during my period because I felt like you're just more, you know, you're just tired. You don't feel like communicating as well. And I definitely noticed, like, especially back then, I could not communicate as effectively. And then even now, being married and like being in a relationship for the past 6 years, I'll still be like, okay, you go do you. Like, I still need my alone time, and I'll still set that in place. And I feel like every woman should articulate her needs and just even recognize when you need that space. And then I love now learning that there's like is there just like 3 main retrogrades to focus on?
I would say for impact on relationships and dating, those would be the 3. There's other retrogrades that happen, probably even, you know, less frequently, but I think the, you know, Mercury retrograde, Venus retrograde, Mars retrograde, those are the 3 that I would think really more often than not will affect the outcome of your dating efforts and your relationships.
Okay. And then, so we talked about like the best times of not dating and dating for astrology. So for cycle syncing, if you're going to look at your life every single month, the best time to go on dates, especially when you're single, is during your ovulation. Like your energy and you're just so charismatic, and it's a time that men are like very attracted to women because our fertility is very desirable to men. So when you're ovulating, even if you're not trying to get pregnant or you're not at that path, because it's unrealistic that we're going to want to get pregnant every single month. So you can use that window to your advantage, especially when you're dating or if you're coupled up, because you're just more excited to go out and do something new. But something with ovulation is our cheeks get naturally rosy. And like men are actually like very attracted to like the ruddy cheeks. If you were to go out and wear red during ovulation, the male would be like very attracted to that because it's like a sign of fertility, which we don't really like ever think about or talk about. But it's such a fascinating time that just like, if you're like, okay, I've been trying to find my person, go out during ovulation, because you might actually be more likely to attract a partner without even trying, because it's just naturally where you're at in your cycle, and men get very drawn to us when we're fertile, you know, which is why you might see like older men dating younger women. Like it's a very desirable thing it's essentially like built into our biochemistry, where like younger women are obviously more likely to reproduce. So to carry on the human race, a man, in terms of like survival of the fittest, is then going to be very attracted to women who could produce offspring, even if that's not even on their forefront to do, which is fascinating. So as young women, we can absolutely use that to our advantage when we are trying to find a person, or if you're dating, it's a great time to like or like in a relationship, it's a great time to come back together, because our communication is much more effective in how we relate to other people.
Yeah, it looks like I need to add more red to my wardrobe. I don't have enough red clothes.
Just for ovulation, just get like a cute red top that you can just go out and wear, especially now that it's like coming up on summer. So white pants would look fantastic with it.
Yeah, for sure. And I always forget, when is the ovulation period?
Yeah, so it would be, do you track your cycle at all? Like when your period
is starting to. I actually, based on your recommendation, because I follow you on Instagram and I go to your website, I downloaded the app Clue.
Yes. I think it's my favorite one.
So helpful. Yeah.
So, and that one too. So in order to get the notification on Clue, you have to be able to go in and actually track your ovulation. So day 1 of your cycle is when you start your period. So then let's say your period is like 5 days. After that period, you enter follicular, which could be about like 7 to 10 days. And it's after that period that you would then ovulate. So it's like roughly 2 weeks after your period starts. So in Clue, because Clue will give you notifications when your period is about to start, but it'll also give you notifications when you're about to ovulate. So to track ovulation, you essentially, and like never TMI here, ladies, because we just get into it. You would track either if you're getting a positive ovulation strip. So some women will use ovulation testing to either get pregnant or to avoid pregnancy. So they would avoid like being intimate with their partner during that time because they don't want to get pregnant. but you can also track your cervical mucus,
Mm-hmm.
which I don't know if you've ever had that like
Yeah.
education.
Yeah.
So if you go into Clue, it'll ask you like, is it watery? Is it sticky? Is it like thicker? That
Mm-hmm.
watery texture is like a clear indication that you're in your ovulation window. So if you
Mm-hmm.
can track that in Clue, you'll start getting notifications to your phone, which
Mm-hmm.
could then make it a lot easier so that you'll know. And then as you're getting more into cycle syncing and understanding your ovulation, you'll notice your energy gets really high,
Mm-hmm.
and you'll start looking at your calendar and just planning out either your dating life around that time
Mm-hmm.
or meetings at work. Like I tell women, it's a great time to just go balls to the wall in your life because you're gonna have so much extra energy.
Yeah.
So if you can start getting that on your calendar, it'll be really helpful when you're setting dates, because then you can look at it and be like, okay, I'm going to be ovulating here. You just have to make sure that you're careful if you're going to be intimate with anyone, what your birth
Mm-hmm.
control is like as well, because
Mm-hmm.
I want women to be able to have children when they want them versus
Yeah.
have it be a surprise.
Yeah, or I can imagine it'd probably be a good time if you're single to schedule a lot of those first dates,
Yeah.
or like those activity dates.
Yeah.
And then kind of, if you decide to be intimate, have a game plan for it, or kind of holds off on that for a few days.
Right. Especially when you're first meeting someone, you want to like get to know them anyway. It's just, and then I'm just imagining if you can then blend that with your astrology. Because if you're in retrograde and you're like, okay, I'm ovulating, it's a great time to date. But if you know that you're in retrograde, we're like, oh, things might not click the way that they're supposed to. That's like a really great time to be with your girlfriends. Because as women, we really do need those really strong bonds with other women. Like it really grounds us. Like think of the last time you had a fantastic girls' night. I know like during quarantine, it might have been a bit harder, but you just feel so lifted, supported, heard, like really grounded as a woman. Like as much as we need men in our lives, we really need to date our girlfriends too. So I feel like in retrograde, that would be like the perfect time to also be leaning more into your relationships with your girlfriends. Because I feel like it's also an act of self-care, because sometimes when we're in relationships, like especially in the early days of relationships, you can kind of forget your girlfriends because you're trying to cultivate this relationship with a potential partner, which of course is valid and we need, but we also need that time to balance out with like female friends.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, if you take the cycles into account and kind of parlay it over to astrology, keeping track of what sign the moon is in, can also help in determining how you might be feeling, right? So the moon signs, I think, every couple of days. So it really kind of goes through all the signs very quickly, sort of similar to how, over the course of a month, your cycle goes through all the 4 stages, and each stage determines, how your energy levels will be, how you'll approach things. So, if the moon is in a more, I guess, water sign like Cancer, if the moon's in Cancer on a certain day or for a couple of days, you probably, that might not be a good time to go out on a date, or to really do something that's very active. You might prefer to stay home. So if you're single and looking, you might not want to go on a date that during that time. But if you're in a couple, you might prefer to stay inside and maybe watch Netflix or something. So, where the moon, what sign the moon is in over the course of a month can also determine, how your emotions are going, and also what you're more likely to want to do. If you want to be more in a reflective mode, if you want to focus more on your friendships with your friends, or your female friendships, or if you actually want to be out there and meeting new people and being active.
Yeah, it's just so helpful to like guide our lives, because I've noticed like in a lot of the conversations I have with women is that they'll mentally beat themselves up over something, or they think that they're not being enough of something, or they're too stressed, or they just are like that mental chatter and judgment that I feel like every woman has. And I feel like by even just understanding our cycle and now being able to blend it with astrology, like with the energies around us, it just makes us feel more grounded and not like we've then done something wrong, which is like what I hear from a lot of women. I think we're raised to be like the good girl. So in the back of our mind, we're just constantly trying to be that person. But it's also like, we're human. Like it's okay for us to take space. It's okay for us to be alone. It's okay to not be dating 24/7 if you're single. You know, like a lot of women will fear the judgment, especially from like our parents, you know, like, what are you doing with your life? And, you know, just all of those questions that we feel like we shouldn't have to answer. So it's just really, I think, affirming for women to be able to take the space that we need when we need it. And now for me, even understanding retrograde, because I like haven't, I like kind of have, but not really. And I've heard it from friends in passing. Like I have a girlfriend who's like really into this, and she's like, oh, I'm not doing that because of retrograde. And I'm like, oh, you know, because I know the energies can be just more intense. And then I look at it, I'm like, oh, maybe that's why things have just been a little shaky. And it's just, I feel like we can always just look for some additional grounding practice. So something I'd love your take on too is using astrology. How can we be more in our feminine energy? Because I noticed when I was dating, I definitely had a better experience myself and then connected with men better when I was more in my feminine. And the same as it has been true in my career. If I was more free flowing and identifying myself as using more of my feminine energy, I noticed that my tone was softer. I had a much more enjoyable time on dating. I connected better with females. I was able to be calmer and more focused at work. Can you share a little bit of like the feminine energy with astrology and either dating or being coupled up?
Yeah, for sure. You know, when I think of feminine energy, I think of two planets. I think of the moon because that represents emotions, it represents the mother. And then I also think of Venus because it's a very feminine planet, you know, and it's named after a very feminine goddess, that being the goddess of love, Venus. So my advice for being in your feminine energy is being true to yourself, which I guess is just like the advice for Astronatic in general, just being true to yourself. So for example, my moon sign is Aquarius, and Aquarius is an air sign. So how my emotions, which I guess I relay or I connect emotions a lot to feminine energy. For some reason, I think because women tend to be more in tune with their emotions or take more stock of it. But with my moon in Aquarius, that means, ironically, I'm not the most emotional person, or how I emote is through thinking about things, thinking about possibilities, thinking about, you know, different ways of approaching things and investigating. I think the way that I emote is by investigating. It's like, I need to know why things happen a certain way. I try to analyze my own emotions. It's like I think of my own emotions, which may sound crazy to somebody that may have a different emotional pattern. And then my Venus is in Virgo, which is an earth sign. So again, not your typical feminine kind of energy. You know, what I'm attracted to is somebody that can be helpful, and how I show love and my feminine energy is by problem solving, which tends to be more of like a male trait. I find males tend to be more of the problem solvers.
They want to fix,
yeah, they want to fix the problem, whereas a lot of women are like, I just want to be heard, or be a problem solver. So I think a way to be in tune with the feminine energy is to own what that looks like for you. It's not going to be the same. I think there's, you know, stereotypes out there, I'm sure, of what feminine energy might be. And it might be, you know, being like the very empathetic kind of person and showing your emotions on your sleeve all the time and things like that. And that may not work for everybody. It definitely doesn't work for me because I don't have my moon and Venus in water signs at all. And water signs, you know, it tend to be the more typical emotional type of signs. You know, if you think of Cancer or Scorpio, for example, they tend to be signs that are very in tune with their emotions in different ways. So I think it's about owning who you really are. So if you're somebody that's exploring, you know, if you're exploring your natal chart, you know, look to where your moon is, look to where your Venus is, and understand more about how you process emotions through that and how you express your love and adoration for somebody else. And then if you're, you know, if you have a love interest or you have a partner, look to see where their moon sign is, because that'll give you an indication of how they process emotions or what kind of emotions they'll be able to take in, how they express themselves emotionally, and also looking at their Venus sign and their Mars sign, because Mars is all about drive and impulse, and men, you know, in general tend to be impulsive more than others. And it's the flip side. If you're a guy and you have female that you're interested in, look to see what their Venus sign is, look to see what their moon sign is. And if you have a same-sex love interest, look at all those planets. So yeah, for me, I would say how to be in your feminine energy is being yourself and not trying to kind of portray this feminine energy that may not match your natural makeup, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, and I love being able to bring in your natal chart and then your partners, because I as you're speaking, I was like, man, this is like next level communication, because it's like just written in our, I don't want to say DNA, but it's written in, like, when you talk about natal chart, it's written in when you were born and where you were born. Yeah. And that just then dictates all these aspects of your own personality. When I think of like feminine energy too, especially with our cycle, especially knowing the women in the Balanced Bombshells community who are very ambitious and very driven, we can get too stuck in our masculine where we're trying to control everything. And that can include our relationships. So being understanding of how to take a step back and trust and have faith in like the process, have faith in ourselves and our person, and how we can articulate our needs in a bit softer way. So it's not like taking out who you are. It's like really helping you as a woman become more grounded in faith and trust, because I've definitely noticed with the women that I've worked with and spoken to is we want to control and fix things. So kind of like just that dominant energy, whereas depending on your partner, that's a very masculine trait, and they can essentially feel emasculated if their driven woman is just constantly like steamrolling, because it's almost like the women who think that the only way to get something done is for them to do it themselves, and then they get really burnt out and exhausted because they're wondering why their partner or the men that they're dating aren't like being dominating. It's because like the woman is just kind of steamrolling. So I could definitely tell, sometimes even my relationship with Tyler now, if I'm being too controlling on something, and I can kind of tell it in my voice or how he might respond, where I'm like, oh, I'm not trusting the process. I'm not giving him faith and understanding to have him do something in his own way. And I just found for myself that trying to be more in my feminine energy, where I'm trusting and having more faith, grounds me and then helps balance the relationship. And I noticed it in dating too. Like if you're dating, most men want to be able to nurture and take care of the woman that they're with. And I feel like, we could have a whole other conversation about our generation of feminists, where I 100% believe that a woman is strong and independent, but having a man like get her door for her or pay for her meal or something isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's like the man showing courtesy and respect for a woman. And I know some women might have a lot to say about that because they like don't appreciate that. But me as a woman, I do. Like, I appreciate when a man gets my chair for me or opens a door for me or offers to pay for something. And like, certainly everything is reciprocated, but I just, for dating, the feminine energy, just in terms of my entire life, and I don't know if you can speak about that too, of just helping you feel more grounded. And then you add another layer of just understanding your own tendencies and like who you are and staying true to that, which is awesome. And I didn't, I know we've talked a bit about feminine energy in our natal chart, but I never would have thought of checking your partner's natal chart in terms of like being in a couple or dating. Like, I find that fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, looking at each other's moon signs, because that could help understand, okay, how do you emote versus how does your partner emote? So for example, my moon is in Aquarius, so I process emotions in a very analytical, thought processed way that isn't your typical emotional way to emote and show your feelings. But if I was with somebody that say had a moon in Cancer, and if I was with a guy that had a moon in Cancer and was very emotional and and really wore his heart on his sleeve and just kind of rolled with whatever emotions came his way, it would probably cause conflict. Not to say that a relationship like that wouldn't work, but if I wasn't aware of my own emotional tendencies, and if I wasn't aware of my partner's emotional tendencies, there would just be a lot of conflict that would be based on lack of self-awareness. But what you mentioned before about how, different ways to show your feminine energy, like, it seemed like a lot of what you were describing was receiving, which is, I think, a big part of feminine energy. energy. So you
Yeah.
describe examples of, you know, letting the guy, you know, pay for your meal, letting the guy, you know, move the chair for you so you can sit down, things like that. They're all based on just letting yourself receive, or even what you were saying, trusting the process, having faith in your partner. It's all about, you know, letting yourself receive. And I could see people with certain moon and or Venus signs having a harder time receiving and, you know, and doing that in order to express more of their feminine energy. I could see myself personally having a hard time with that. Not that I wouldn't want to do that, but I think that would be my natural inclination. And now, you know, describing what you've just described, I can see how that might have gotten in the way of prior dating situations that I was in, where maybe I was just trying to control the process too much, or being, you know, focused on the uncertainty of it all, or not letting myself receive, and that in the way of a connection.
Right. And I feel like so many women have gone down that path too. And for myself, what I noticed was it was like kind of that even like not even necessarily receiving from men, but receiving in life in general. There was just this underlying subconscious belief that I didn't believe I either deserved it or I like didn't know how to receive in that way. So I talk to women a lot about being able to receive, and because like we're just always so quick to try to control a situation because we don't want it to fail, or we don't want to be left alone, or we don't want, like somehow we have the subconscious fear coming and bubbling to the surface, but it can kind of make that disconnect between like a partner or a potential relationship. So using astrology too, how can we flow better in our relationships?
That is a great question. And I think that's probably a question that a lot of people that pursue astrology services or are interested in astrology want to learn more about. So if you follow astrology, you'll probably hear about astrologers that do synastry charts. So that is when, you know, an astrologer will actually compare your chart and puts, basically it sort of looks like your chart and your partner's chart just superimposed together. So if you get ever a synastry chart done, which you can, different astrology websites have it available for free. That's pretty much how it'll look like both charts on top of each other. And that can help you see how your planets align with your partner's planets and the different connections that the planets make. So, you know, I would be able to see through a synastry chart how my moon, you know, is connected to my love interest moon, you know, whether they're at a certain aspect, whether the two moons are opposite each other on the charts, whether they're at a 90-degree angle, so on and so forth. It's interesting because how I approach relationship coaching or relationship analysis through astrology is really not through synastry charts. Like that's not my forte. I don't do that, but I've taken a different approach, which has been pretty successful so far. So I really base it on self-awareness. I, you know, will do an Astro report for an individual. I'll do the Astro report for their partner or love interest. And then we'll compare each of the components of that person's chart. So, you know, comparing, okay, what does your chart say about all your relationship tendencies versus what does your partner's chart say about his or her relationship tendencies? Other things I look at are, you know, certain asteroids like Chiron, which is an asteroid that represents internal wounds. So, you know, understanding where your internal wound is and comparing it to where your partner's internal wounds is, that'll be super important, because a lot of times when there's conflict that bubbles up to the surface, it's because your internal wound is opening up, whether it's a fear of rejection or a fear of a lack of control or fear of a romantic relationship not working out. There's certain internal wounds that we have that are always going to be there and will flare up from time to time. And if you're aware of them, it's easier to navigate as opposed to having, you know, all this conflict that may happen from time to time with your partner and then not understanding why it's happening and therefore not knowing how to actually work through it. So that's how I really approach it. I think two things on a chart to look at as far as how somebody navigates relationships would probably be Venus. So I brought up Venus a lot when it comes to love and relationships. Like, that planet is really like the planet to really focus on. So Venus, but also an asteroid called Juno. So Juno is an asteroid that represents what is a good fit for you, or what you may be drawn to in a long-term partner. Whereas Venus describes more what you might be attracted to in a love situation. And it's important to know the two, because they can be different, and that could cause a lot of conflict in how people navigate relationships. So for example, if somebody has their Venus in a fiery sign like Aries, they might be attracted to somebody that's very independent and very impulsive and driven. But then if on the flip side, their Juno, which represents what they're drawn to a long-term relationship, is in a water sign like Cancer, that might mean that even though they're attracted to somebody that's independent and driven and impulsive and possibly maybe reckless or just like very daring, what they need for a long-term relationship is somebody that's actually home oriented and very emotional and very nurturing. And a lot of times when you're attracted to somebody that's very daring, you may not get the nurturing qualities. So knowing that about yourself is very important, because I think a lot of people out there, they might have a type, they might date a certain type, and then they wonder, okay, I've dated X number of people, I've been on the dating scene for this long, and I just always fall into the same pitfall where I meet people I'm attracted to, I date them, and then it just doesn't make it past that hump for it to become a long-term relationship. And a lot of times that could be happening because you're going for what you're attracted to, which is fine, but you're not keeping in mind what you actually need for a long-term relationship, and knowing that that's actually might be different than what you're initially attracted to. So I think how that relates to non-astrological advice is, people being attracted to certain qualities without keeping in mind what do they need for a long-term relationship. And I'm sure that plays a role, I can imagine, in cycles as well. Like, I don't know, like, are there certain times of the month where you're attracted to certain things that may or may not be in the long run? You're like, yes.
Well, I've talked to a lot of women of like their sexual attraction and how it changes during the cycle. So during ovulation, like, you're going to be naturally more attracted to your partner or a guy that you're dating. Whereas before your period, you are not like, your desire in terms of your libido can take a dip based on your natural hormone fluctuations. So I actually noticed this sometimes in like Tyler and I's relationship, where it would be like, you just want to be by yourself or like turn inward or just kind of like have a little bit of separation. But when you're in a couple, or let's say you're dating and you're like, man, I was really attracted to him last week, but I don't feel it this week. And then it layers on of like, well, maybe I'm not attracted to him at all, and just like kind of spirals. And especially when you're in those early phases of dating, that's like really important and something to be aware of, because it doesn't mean that you're then not wanting to be with your partner. It just can maybe mean like the natural, where you are in your cycle. So it usually shows up the week before a period. That's like most of the time that women would feel a lack of desire, and nothing is wrong with you, nothing is wrong with your partner. And really being conscious and aware of that it's just a natural time for us to not feel as sexually driven, basically. And so when you're dating and you kind of feel that dip, or you're in a relationship and you think something is wrong, it actually can be very related to where you are in your cycle. And I think for us, like, just even having that understanding and awareness changed so much, because there were times where, your partner might be trying to make advances and he's then feeling rejected because you're not into it. Like, something happens with so many couples and relationships, even with dating. And we then can overanalyze the relationship or overanalyze our feelings and emotions, especially when you're dating, where you're just like, aren't I supposed to feel this way like all the time? Or am I not supposed to be in that hump until I'm like 5 years post marriage? Like, just all these thoughts that can come forward, but it's very related to how our hormones naturally drive. And it's more of, the week before our period, your body is prepping to get pregnant every single month, regardless if you're going to be pregnant or not. Your body's preparing to be able to create that home for a potential child, because that's how our bodies are designed. We're designed to reproduce. So even if you're then not getting pregnant every single month, your body's going through that same process. So that when we have our period, that's the shedding of the lining of our uterus, which was building up the week before our period to essentially implant a fertilized egg. And then we have our period because we're then not pregnant. So it's just hormonally just something that is very natural to us as women. And then we can kind of carry that over into our understanding of our own bodies and our own emotions and how that comes forward. Because like just how you're talking about the astrology and the changing of the moon and the changing of the energy and the changing of the planets and how things are aligned, all those are very shifting in our emotions and our energy centers. Whereas hormonally, they really do drive our emotions and how we're feeling within our own bodies and within our own minds and within our own lives. So I feel like having a deep understanding of both of these components just brings like that next level awareness of how we actually feel, you know, like we have to think objectively to them. And then just even understanding, oh, we're in retrograde, or like, oh, it's a week before my period, I might not be into my partner as much, and like that's okay. So you might have noticed that in your life too with dating and relationships.
Oh yeah, especially like TMI, like
never TMI. Yeah.
TMI safe zone here, but
yeah, always.
Yeah, I'm in my period week, I guess, right now, but like, yeah, definitely before, like the week prior or a few days ago before my period week started, you know, yeah, I definitely was feeling kind of funky and weird and entering conflicts and things like that. And coincidentally, Venus has had some really tough aspects where it's been opposite Pluto. And so it's just been, I think the past few days have probably been a tough time for people in navigating dating and navigating relationships. And then when you add to that where you are in your cycle,
it's like a whole,
it's just like a whole other layer. So
if
these Venus aspects are happening that are challenging, and then you're in your days leading up to your period.
We're naturally more emotional, like so estrogen starts to peel back, and estrogen is a hormone that keeps us very charismatic and a bit more free flowing. When she pulls back and progesterone rises to be able to like prepare either for a baby or to have our period, technically we should be feeling more relaxed. And so I've noticed with women, when they don't have the balance of those two hormones, that's when they're going to notice more of like the PMS symptoms, like either bloating or fatigue or brain fog, which then of course doesn't make you feel sexy or charismatic in your life, regardless of the realm. And you can just feel a bit more blah, but you naturally, your brain hemispheres are also changing with that hormonal shift. So your brain, your left and right brain hemispheres will become the most aligned at like during your period. So that your brain chemistry is starting to shift during that time, which can make you way more aware of what isn't working in your life. So if you've ever seen women or have gone through that pattern yourself where you're overanalyzing, you're nitpicking, you're not necessarily like starting fights on purpose, but you notice that a lot of your conversations create conflict. It's because you're more blunt in your communication, because you're more forthcoming of what is working for you and what isn't. And you're not as free flowing as you were at other times of the month based on how your hormones were. So even just having that understanding to then be flowing more in your relationships, like that for me too, at least with Tyler and I, helped so much, because I didn't even understand that aspect of myself, which then it carries through into your relationships where you're just like, is something actually wrong, or am I just more sensitive? Like I would get very sensitive to his tone sometimes, where a week before it wouldn't have bothered me and everything would have been fine. And then, you know, that just can create conflict as well. So for you to kind of feel blah and then layering on with the astrology, like you can just see how we all need to be having more of these conversations so that we can just have more of that deeper understanding within ourselves of, because our emotions are a lot, you know, like especially with women, whether we express them, however we express them, it's just a lot for anybody.
Yeah. And what's a good way to navigate that time? What would that phase be called? I forgot. The
luteal.
Luteal. So yeah, that's totally right, because I was in my luteal phase a few days ago, and I was definitely more nitpicky, and like certain emotions were coming up. So now I understand that a lot of it could have been because of the phase that I was in.
And like even we also produce, we can produce less serotonin at that time. So serotonin is a very feel-good hormone, and it's very like a self-confident building hormone. So if we're not getting enough serotonin to our brain, which can very well happen before our period, we cast a lot of doubt on ourselves, or like you look in the mirror and you nitpick your appearance, or that's when a lot of women will kickstart their dieting or their fitness journey because they're feeling dissatisfied with themselves. And it very much is just kind of like the hormones kind of shifting a bit. And so there's certainly things we can do with like food and fitness that can promote more serotonin. But without even having that understanding, we can, because I used to look in the mirror all the time and being like, I feel like I gained 10 pounds, but obviously it was untrue because my pants fit the same. So it's just very like, it plays a lot of tricks on a woman's mind. And I feel like, you know, without having those conversations, it can be so damaging to our self-esteem. And you can see why so many women are running towards the latest diet or running towards the latest craze or running out to buy all these beauty products. And just having that awareness of, oh, okay, I wasn't actually feeling that way last week. I felt really good about myself last week. What has changed this week? And being really conscious of that luteal phase. And so I always tell women it's in like a 2-week period, your luteal phase. The first week is like coming off ovulation, where you'll still be feeling like really good and really energetic and really wanting to be out and about with life. But that second phase, like which most women would know is their premenstrual week, that's where things can start shifting a lot. So it's just something to be, you know, become aware of, and just, okay, maybe I need to take more space for myself. Maybe I need to journal. I really need to question these emotions and thoughts that are coming forward, because they don't define me or define my life or who I am. Because without that awareness, it can definitely kickstart a lot of your energies for the month ahead, which women might do with like dieting or breaking up with a partner, or, you know, filing for divorce, or, you know, like just something like that.
Yeah, so I can imagine the menstrual phase, when your brain is actually balanced. It's like a good time to process whatever happened in the uteral, or to like do damage control even. Like you probably imagine sometimes you enter that phase and you're kind of like, what did I do?
What just happened? Yeah. When a woman's period starts, they're like, I feel like completely normal now. And it's just the way, so you can 100% smooth that transition out, and it doesn't have to be like that. But for when those are intense, it just means that things are dropping too quickly than your body is actually meant to do, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's like the shift between the two phases is happening too severely. Yeah.
So this has been such a fantastic conversation. I have loved blending the astrology with cycle thinking and just understanding these components that I don't know much about. So I thank you so much for joining us today. I am going to be linking your website, your Instagram, so people can find you online. And if you guys are at all interested in getting your Astro report, I highly recommend it. And then the most beneficial for me was being able to actually talk to you about that report. I don't know if I would have gotten as much benefit without having like a one-on-one conversation with you. And you just, I totally see why people have like astrology advisors, because I felt like I was having like a therapy session with you of like, just all these things that you're like, I'm so confused. And you were just like, oh, well, your chart says this. And it's just like, oh, okay. It's very grounding. So I thank you so much for the work that you do and for joining me today. Do you have any like last minute like tips or anything you want to share with us before we wrap up?
Yeah, sure. Well, first I want to thank you so much, Laura, for having me on. I've been following you and Balance Bombshells for quite some time now. So it's so exciting to be in one of your episodes and really blend the work that we do together and see the synastry in that. And I guess last advice I would give people is just, you know, when it comes to dating smarter, not harder, or just navigating relationships and singlehood, it's really about self-awareness and really learning about yourself. That is the core to everything. You know, you might hear about that already, you know, through self-help books or whatnot. But, you know, the cool thing about astrology, or at least how I approach it, it's a way for you to get to know more about yourself and really know like what your pattern is, like what your puzzle pieces are. And with my background as a counselor as well, I do take what I call an Astro Counselling approach. And that's probably why, Laura, like you felt like when we had that debrief about your report, it was like a therapy session, because I use a lot of those techniques. So yeah, what I would say to everybody is just hang in there, whether you're in a relationship or looking for that person. And I think definitely one of the main things that came out of our conversation is how emotions and relationship dynamics and dating dynamics, they have their ebbs and their flows. And it's important to just go with the flow and take breaks when you need to, or take that time for yourself and reflect. And, you can't always be go, 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 because you're going to crash at some point. So you kind of have to go with the waves.
Yeah. Which I know we don't always like doing, but life gets really good when we can have that free-flowing blend. So yeah, I'm so thankful that you were able to join us today, and we will talk soon.
Okay, sounds great. Bye, everybody.